Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. Three men and a woman, sharing a strong family resemblance of bushy eyebrows, curly hair, and deep blue eyes, entered Riverrun to the cheers of soldiers and small folk. Two of the men, an older man whose auburn hair had long turned gray, and one younger man with a strong, stocky build, wore plate mail and long swords. The third man attempted a smile, but his dirty clothes and the caked blood on a scraggly red beard betrayed his recent captivity. The woman, dressed in a woolen dress of red and blue under her gray cloak, nodded to the crowd, her face full of emotion for the liberation of her family home. The Tullys had returned to Riverrun. Two were Starks, one by marriage and one by birth, but their glossy red-brown hair made clear their heritage. There was polite clapping for Edmure, admiration for the Blackfish and the Lady Catelyn. But the most fervent cheers were saved for the man of the hour, Robb Stark. Shouts of the young wolf came from all directions, and the rivermen celebrated with abandon. They had been humiliated by the lions and welcomed Robb as a savior, the conquering hero, returning with soldiers and prisoners. At the Citadel, Jon read every single scrap of parchment he could find on the birth of ancient Valyria. Before they tamed dragons, the Valyrians had been shepherds on a rocky peninsula, far from the wealth and decadence of the great cities of Essos. As they rose, Valyria fought 5 great wars with the old empire of Gess, with its Shadowbinders, Lockstep legions, and Manticore riders. The Citadel claimed that the dragons made the Gascari Wars a foregone conclusion. But Jon suspected that was a lie, told by the victors. The old empire founded by Grazdan the Great was a dangerous enemy and had ruled Essos with magic and cruelty for 4,000 years. The good masters, wise masters, and great masters cared nothing of wasting hundreds of thousands of lives, sellswords and slave soldiers, against the upstart freehold. In the early days, when the freehold was a true republic, generals were chosen by the dragon riders to command the small armies of Valyria against the vast hordes of geese. The victorious leaders would be granted a triumph to fly their dragon over the topless towers of old Valyria and offer a sacrifice at the temple of Io on Capitoline Hill, between the fields of war and the cradle of fire. And as the general basked in the adoration of crowds, the plunder of war, and enemy leaders awaiting their fate, a slave would hold a golden crown and whisper, "Memento mori," remember that you will die. And they were mortal. The 40 great families of Valyria fought and killed each other as well as any faceless man could. Most generals died within a few years of their triumph, often with the help of their allies. Victory was fleeting, but defeat lasted forever. Jon wondered why, in light of so many examples, that was entirely forgotten after battle. "Why aren't you with them?" Jari Mormont said, pointing to her sister Daisy, the small Jon, Brynden Blackwood, and Patrek Mallister, walking behind the Tullys. Jon counted at least 3 dozen heirs and knights of the guard following Robb, like a puppy in a pack. "I wasn't at the Battle of Riverrun," Jon said. "Neither was Daeron Hornwood, and he is still preening," Lyra said. The Hornwood heir basked in the cheers. "Daeron Hornwood deserves the praise. He fought hard against Sir Jaime Lannister," Jon said. The knight in question snorted derisively, giving a clear opinion on Hornwood's fighting skills. "Besides, the Tullys see me as a blight on Lady Stark's honor. Who cares about the Tullys? You are a Stark of Winterfell. They should be grateful that you marched south with your bannermen," Jari said. And that was the problem. Catelyn Stark worried that Jon would become the Stark of Winterfell and usurp his brothers and sisters. "There are more important things than a parade. I need to speak to the maester of the castle," Jon said. The Mormont girls looked at each other before nodding. "We will come with you," Lyra said. "I was hoping you could guard Jaime Lannister instead," Jon said. "We can do both. We will bring him with us," Jori said brightly. Jon sighed. It was early in the afternoon, and with the battle over, the she-bears had little to do. House Mormont had been helpful, and he could see no reason to turn them down. "Fine, but I will do the talking." The maester's room was a small dark triangle, only a few doors past a large room, guarded by several Tully men in silverfish helms. Jon guessed that would be the castle solar, and was surprised that it was unused. Surely Hoster Tully would welcome his only grandson and eldest daughter after the victory. Jon walked in with Chet, Jaime Lannister, and the 2 Mormonts. An old man with white hair and lined, withered hands tended to Edmure, checking scrapes and bruises. A long chain hung down over the red tunic, with the most prominent links being silver, bronze, copper, and gold. This maester was skilled in the practical arts of helping the Lord manage the castle. Kingslayer? The Golden Knight shrugged and didn't bother to respond. You are now our captive. Admiral Tully rasped. I am Robb Stark's prisoner, not yours. I beat your men bloody at the Golden Tooth and Riverrun. You would never have managed to capture me, Jaime said. The lion still had claws, even if he merely stated the facts. Before an argument could break out, Jon turned to the old man. You are the master? I am Master Reimagined. I have served at the castle for a decade. The man was at least 60 years of age. Jon wondered where Vianne served before Riverrun. The Citadel claimed to care nothing for power and politics, but that half-truth concealed a great deal of lies. I am Jon Snow. There are many men who need healing. What supplies and herbs do you have in stock? Valyrian went over to a shelf of half-full clay and glass jars. The thick white liquid was milk of the poppy, and there were 2 flasks of dream wine. Besides that, Jon saw and smelled very little. A bit of pale red fire milk, mustard seeds, and nettles, and a few sticks of willow's bark. A half a dozen fat leeches slithered in a shallow pan of water. There were no bunches of king's copper, pennyroyal, or sour leaf. What of bandages or dressings? Do you have honey or vinegar? Jon asked. The master shook his head and had been busy preparing milk of the poppy and dream wine. But we have little else. We ran out of wound dressings when the Lannister army attacked. Jon narrowed his eyes. Milk of the poppy needed to be made fresh every few days. The opiate was powerful but effective, given only to those mortally wounded or in great pain. That jar would certainly not be used to treat soldiers. Jon knew the maester had been trapped in the castle for the last month, but the lack of supplies was pathetic. You must not think poorly of Master Reimagined. He is a skilled healer, but not prepared for a siege, Edmure said. That sounds like all the Tullys. Jaime quipped to Edmure's anger. Where can I get herbs, thread, or dressings? Jon asked. There's a wood witch near the castle village. She treats small folk and sallies who work at the brothel, Reimagined said. After Jon thanked the master, a corpulent warrior dressed in green and gray burst into the room. He had never thought Wallace Manderly could move so quickly. Maester Snow, you must come. Wendell was injured in the battle, Wallace said, gasping for air. Several other northerners, Eddard Stark and the small Jon Umber, followed him in, albeit more leisurely. Lyra and Jory greeted their eldest sister with pleasure. I cannot help without supplies. The Zorthriman has told me of a healer that may have herbs and dressings. She resides in the village. I will go there at once, Jon said. There still may be Lannister men lurking around. We will accompany you, Eddard said. I, Lord Stark, would be furious if you were hurt. He wanted you to join in the celebrations and his private meeting with Hoster Tully, Smazon said. Jon doubted that the other Tullys would be as receptive. I will come as well, Daisy said. Can't let my little sisters have all the fun. What about me? Do you plan to drag me around to buy herbs, Snow? Jaime complained. Absolutely not. You will stay under guard near the castle. Chet, tell the other boys to boil water and start fires and build wood pallets. We will treat patients outside in the yard. No tower has enough space. Sir Jaime. At the Whispering Wood, you helped with the Lannister prisoners. If I have enough supplies, I will heal them as well. So let them know that, Sir Jaime. Leziel Wallace, please attend to Jaime Lannister and help bring the injured to Chet and his boys. I will treat Sir Jaime as soon as I secure supplies, Jon said. Maester, Lord Stark wishes to speak to you, Small Jon Umber said. It will have to wait until I find bandages and medicine. Robb would want the men healed first, Jon said simply. Ned Stark had trained his children well, and Jon knew that Robb valued the well-being of Wendell Manderly and other bannermen before a chat. The fields were full of silent sisters giving last rites. Their gray shrouds and cowled faces made Jon uneasy, as did the wagons loaded with the dead. Thousands of bodies littered the fields, and Jon, accompanied by the small Jon, Eddard Stark, and the 3 Mormonts, rode by on their horses. As he heard the shrieks of the wounded and saw the burnt fields and ripped tents streaked with dried blood, Jon thought of the terrible hardships of battle, even for the victors. War was not glory, but hell. Ending the war quickly, with the least loss of life, was the correct goal. To do so safely, they needed to bring the old lion to his knees. They burst into a clearing of dirty makeshift tents and saw several men with greedy eyes and sour faces. A small blond boy, perhaps 10 and 2, cried for help as an ugly pale man brandished a knife at a woman dressed in peasant clothes. Backed into a corner, she looked older, but Jon realized that was from her drab dress and the gray shawl over her dark hair. Several young girls, some barely older than the blond boy, and children cowered as a dour black-haired man with steel greaves over his legs watched without emotion. The ripped dresses made it quite clear what these men intended. "What is going on here?" Jon asked. Lord Stark ordered that small folk to not be harmed. "Begging your pardon, these are Lannister camp followers. We are just going to have a bit of fun with them." Ramsay Dustin said. "My mother isn't a camp follower, she just sells herbs and medicine," the boy said. Jon looked over the brightly dressed girls with their soft skin and long hair and curly ringlets. The older woman was not a whore, but the younger ones were likely paid companions. "They are not to be harmed. You will not rape any women and children, whether they follow the Lannisters or not," Jon said coolly. Ramsay turned his colorless eyes away from the Wood Witch, a crazed smirk on his face. The man with the steel greaves drew a great sword with both of his gauntleted hands. The other soldiers backed away from the girls, but kept their weapons ready. "Steel Shanks, Walton, you are Rose Bolton's man. What are you doing with these thieves and rapers?" Small John asked. A white dire wolf, teeth bared in a silent snarl, appeared next to the children, and the Mormonts urged their mounts forward, flanking Ramsay. Eddard Karstark rode up as well, his long axe between Jon and the greatsword. "We won't bother you, Snow. But men have their needs." Ramsay stalked off, and the men followed. Steelshanks retreated last, his weapon covering their escape. "I thought Steelshanks would be marching with the other Bolton men from the twins," Small John said. They wore no sigils of the flayed man, but Jon was certain that they followed Ramsay Dustin and not Walton. "Are you the Wood Witch?" Jon asked. The gray woman had hugged the blond boy, softly whispering into his ear. "Yes, Seer, Asha, my lord. I sell herbs and potions," she said. "I am no lord or seer. What do you have in stock?" Jon said. "Taincy, wormwood, penny royal," she started. "I have no need for moon tea. What do you have that can heal?" Jon said. "Many things, Seer. I have mustard seeds, king's copper, and sour leaf. I have bearberry, marigold, and yarrow leaves," Asha said. "How much herbs do you have? And would you have bandage or vinegar?" Jon asked. The blond boy escaped her arms, his bright green eyes suspicious. "Are you going to pay, or will you just steal my mother's belongings?" "Cherry," the woman said sharply, with a tinge of fear. "Pardon, Sarah, my son spoke out of turn." Jon chuckled. "You are a bold lad. Hey, I will pay and more. I need willing helpers to harvest more herbs and medicines. Tell me, are there other plants nearby? Is there aloe or sphagnum moss or goldenrod? I am not certain of the names." "Bring me the book," Yacha said. The boy took out a worn, illustrated manuscript from a chest, and Jon's eyes rose in surprise when he read the title. "You have a copy of Dioscorides' work De Materia Medica. There is only one edition at the Citadel, and even that is incomplete. Although I have heard Assisi healers have translated the work into multiple languages," Jon said. "Mother, is this aloe?" The boy pointed to a picture of a flowering green plant with thick, fleshy orange and red leaves. "The book says the sap can treat burns and wounds. The plant grows in the sandbars of the Red Fork," he said smugly. "Impressive," Jon said, commenting both on the book and the 12-year-old's ability to read. "And who are these other children here? Are they also your helpers?" "The girls are camp followers, but they are not loyal to the Lannisters, and this is Satson." Aisha put her arm around a boy who was as pretty as any girl, with dark eyes, soft skin, and raven ringlets. "Satson watches over the children of the ladies." "That is not a name common to the Riverlands," Jon said. Satin was a weave made of silk, a fabulously expensive item. In the Reach, only the Hightowers and the Tyrells could afford such a luxury. The traders from UT bragged often about how soft and light a pure silk dress could be. Not the adulterated silk and wool blends peddled to the nobility. "I grew up in a brothel in Old Town, my lord. I was forced to flee when there was trouble," Satin said in a sweet voice, more suited for a bard. I have been teaching Satin how to read and write, Jerry said. I will pay for your assistance. Copper stars for bunches of herbs, particularly aloe. I would need thread and dressings, and would buy honey, vinegar, and moss you could supply. I would pay 10 scissor stags, Jon said. For how many helpers? And for how long? A week? A month? The blond boy prodded. 10 stags a day. For any of you, if you can tend wounds and feed patients, you are welcome to work, and I would pay extra for any herbs gathered, and would be happy for you to make introductions to small folk who could sell honey and vinegar. I know not how many days, but I would expect at least a se'nnight. Jon said to the looks of wonder in the crowd. 70 stags for a week was generous pay for small folk, particularly children. Even for a whore, it was more than they could earn for 2 days on their backs. And how do we know you will pay? You might claim we provided poor service. The blond boy said. He was a fierce child, and Jon wondered if he had a touch of the wolf's blood. That was unlikely given the bright blonde hair and green eyes. Jon took out a fat purse, clinking with coins. He had spent much on rope and pitch, but there were still 24 gold dragons left. I will give 50 silver stags now to each of you for 5 days of work. Azia, I will buy all the herbs you have now for 2 golden dragons, and I would like you to show Satin and the others how to find more. I swear on my father's honor that I will keep our agreement. In fact, I also need to pay my Wintertown crew for their good work over the past few weeks. They're small folk too. Come to the castle. You will have meat and bread, and a place by my side. The fear on Isa's face disappeared amidst the eagerness of her son and the whores. Jon had questions, of course. Even a damaged and incomplete copy of De Materia Medica was worth 20 gold dragons. How could a wood witch afford that? And a 12-year-old who could teach others literacy? That was unusual. Jon had read the entire Winterfell library twice over by the age of 11, but he had never been normal. He was an obsessive reader and swallowed books whole under candlelight. Jon read less now than before, but only because his time was spent on practical knowledge and experiments. He shook off his thoughts. The mystery of Isa and her son would have to wait. The sun was low in the sky when Jon finished the last surgery on the broken leg of a Westerfield knight. There were more men to be seen and injuries to fix, but he had attended to the most severe, and there was no space left in the courtyard. Hundreds of men were lying flat on crude beds, although Chat and Dennis had cleverly put like injuries together. There were many more with minor hurts, but Jon thought they could be easily seen tomorrow. Jon was quite pleased tonight by a new discovery. At one point, he had run out of honey and apple vinegar. Riverrun made its own wine, from small tart grapes grown on the quiet island, 100 miles to the east, where the salt pans met the Bay of Crabs. The wine was rather sour, but Jon knew that grape skin, like vinegar, had acidic qualities. He had taken a few barrels of must, the grape juice containing stems, seeds, and skins, cooked it over an open fire, and combined it with vinegar. The resulting liquid, thicker and sweeter, worked well to clean wounds and fight infection. It even tasted better than vinegar, despite being just as acidic. If they were not at war, Jon would have experimented to produce this product in mass. Anything that would make meals sweet could be sold throughout the 7 kingdoms, and perhaps even Issos. He wondered what Owen and Alaras would say to this invention. Perhaps in their next dinner, he would show how the condiment could brighten northern cuisine, so it wasn't simply pork pies and roast venison. It brought a smile to his face. Even in the middle of destruction, new ideas could be discovered. He was happy, too, about his new helpers. He had ordered the Wintertown boys to rest, as many had not slept last night. Cletus and Dennis had not wanted to, but Jon said that a tired physician would make mistakes, and for matters of life or death, that was not acceptable. The whores had worked well as nurses, watching over patients, bringing fresh water from the tumblestone, serving bone broth, and keeping dressings moist. Aisha had stayed outside the castle to oversee the harvest of herbs, but her son had been quite energetic in delivering goods from merchants. Honey, thread, even wood boards for the makeshift beds. Master Snow, I am ever so grateful for Wendell's recovery, Wiles said. The cut had been easy to close, and with a poultice of honey and bearberry, Wendell recovered quickly. The second son was gulping down a tonic of balsamic vinegar and marveling at the sweetness. Jon doubted it would go well with the rich food of White Harbor. But he was not a cook. It is nothing, sir. Again, any reward should go to my helpers. Ser Wendell must rest and drink fresh water often and check the dressing to make certain it is clean. Jon said, House Manderly is in your debt. My father would be proud to host a feast in your honor, Wylis said. The rotund Manderly brothers clearly had partaken of many such feasts. Jon waved it off. Your men are loyal to House Stark. The return of my father and sisters is all I care about. The heir to White Harbor walked off happily. Aren't you tired of all these people thanking you? Jaime Lannister smirked. I've helped your men as well. I have treated a dozen Lannister knights and many more from your bannermen, Jon said. They're not sure what to think, bastard, Jaime said. There was no tone of arrogance in his voice. They should think that we do not wish them to die, Jon said. Satin walked over, carrying a large sealed pot. The boy whore attracted many uncomfortable stares with his pretty, effeminate features. Jon did not care. Satin was quick to learn and clever, and knew how to deal with complaints and when to call for help. The other whores looked to Satin for guidance, and the boy proved more than capable. Master Snow, the liquid is ready, Satin said. And you have washed the pot in boiling water? Jon asked. Aye, we washed our hands before. The knife to cut the leaves was clean. We have left some of the leaves so the plant would grow back, Satin said. Excellent! Jon opened the pot and sniffed. It smelled strong, like a stinky onion. He wondered if all aloe plants had the same odor. Sir Jaime, ask them to come. Jaime called out to a crowd of sullen warriors sitting in the corner. These were the men burned by the flaming siege tower. A huge man, powerful and muscled, stepped forward. I will treat the burn now. This gel will heal your skin and protect you from any infection, Jon said. You burned us first, and now you wish to heal. What game are you playing, sir? Lord Roland Craycall said in a booming voice. I asked you to surrender, and then Sir Jaime asked you as well. You were too busy chanting none. So fierce you could have bent the knee and avoided this, Jon said. He dipped a brush first in boiling water and then in the clear gel before handing it to Satin. The boy swabbed the burns on Lord Craycall's arms. Craycall's craggy face blinked in surprise at the soothing gel. My thanks, but my sons will still seek vengeance, like the wild boars they are. Do boars seek revenge against wolves? Jon joked. How many sons should I fear? 3, and they all serve in Tywin Lannister's host. Roland boasted. All of them? Who stays at home at your castle? Jon asked. Only my castellan. The Craycall men are all in the Riverlands. You will see how fierce a boar can be, Lord Roland said. So your castle is entirely empty. A small force could capture it, Jon mused. Roland turned white with anger. You will never make it to Craycall. They will stop you at the Golden Tooth, he said. Lord Roland, stop talking, Sir Jaime cried. You have already told him too much. The giant man looked confused. What have I told him? That all your men are east of here. That you have few troops at home. That we rely on the Golden Tooth to seal our borders. Do you plan to give him a map of the Westerlands and show him where to attack? Jaime said, Don't worry, Sir Jaime. I would have found this out anyway, and Lord Craycall is not the only one who talks. Besides, everyone knows about the tooth already. Jon said, unperturbed by Jaime Lannister's half-hearted glare. He motioned to several lads returning to the yard, and the now refreshed Wintertown crew took the gel to treat other prisoners. Jon left a confused Lord Craycall and annoyed Jaime Lannister behind. It had been a productive afternoon. Oliver Frey was waiting when Jon retired to his rooms to wash the blood off his clothes. He followed the squire to the great hall of the castle where Lord Tully would receive powerful guests. The solar remained unused, and the hallway was crowded with knights and lords. Robb's location was obvious given the Stark house guards standing outside, and the many pacing men near the door. A big bald old man with a weeping green willow on his sleeve was trying to calm down several younger noblemen, including a Goodbrook, Patrick Mallister, the red-headed Piper heir, and a nondescript knight with the willow sigil of the Ryger family. The four were engaged in a heated discussion, and Jon noticed that there were few Northmen around. They were probably either drunk or preparing to be drunk at the feast tonight. Ghost and Grey Wind played in the woods outside but would return to the castle for dinner. Hallis Malin waved Jon through the door, a smile on his big brown bearded face. Hal is a loyal fighter, but aligned closely to Catelyn Stark. He would never dare to smile like that in Winterfell or under Lady Stark's eyes. Robb sat in the high seat reserved for a great lord, looking as cold and serious as his lord father, Brynden Tully, stood at the door, while Edmure and Lady Stark got up to leave. Robb did not frown, but only a fool would not notice the tension in the room. Robb bade the Tullys farewell until dinner before asking Olyvar to dismiss everyone in the hallway. He would not give any more private audiences that evening. Jon waited until the squire comes back. Olyvar, could you stand outside to make certain no one is listening? Ask any Stark guards to step away, especially Hallis Malin, Jon said. Olyvar nodded and left to fulfill orders. Hallis Malin is a good man, Robb said. Yes, but with loose lips, I doubt you want him to repeat whatever is troubling you, Jon said. The heir to Winterfell nodded. Jon and I have been speaking to the Riverlords. They tell horrible stories of the Lannister forces, burning villages with women and children trapped, chopping off the hands and feet of prisoners, looting and pillaging. Lady Shella, when 'twas driven out of her home in Harrenhal on the threat she would be given to the garrison and raped 100 times over. The mountain burned Stonehenge, killed many small folk, raped one of Jon Osbraken's daughters, and left the castle a smoking ruin. Robb said, Who leads those troops and how many? Jon asked. The mountain, of course, and even more disgusting creatures. Imry Lorch is rumored to hold Harrenhal. There are sellswords of the brave companions led by a usse named Vargo Hoat. His nickname is the Crippler. I do not believe the forces are that large, perhaps 1,000 light cavalry for the mountain, and the same number or slightly more for the sellswords, but they prey where our allies are weak. They forage what food they can carry and burn all the rest. Robb said, The Riverlords are asking for our help. They want revenge on these scum and to protect their castles and small folk. Robb, these are terrible things, but you do not have the men to spread over the Riverlands. And Tywin Lannister's host is between you and Harrenhal. You are also not Lord Paramount of the Trident. Hoster Tully is responsible for keeping the peace, not the North, Jon said. Robb slammed a fist down on the desk. And that is the problem. Hoster Tully is not well. He is dying, isn't he? Jon asked. Robb looked up in surprise. How do you know? The Tullys have not allowed any of the bannermen to see him. Master Vim brews, dream wine, and milk of the poppy. Who else could that be for? His castle is besieged, yet he doesn't lead the troops, and he did not receive you in the Solar. Jon said, He is so small and shriveled. Mother used to tell us stories about the mighty warrior who struck the Deal's key to Robert's rebellion. The Baratheons would have never won without the North, the Riverlands, and the Vale. Now he is lost in poppy dreams and weaker than Bran. I had hoped that Lord Tully would command Lady Lysa to send me troops, Robb said. Your aunt has already refused Lady Stark and the Blackfish, Jon pointed out. A father is not a sister or an uncle. If our Lord Father gave you an order, what would you do? Robb said. I went to the Citadel and trained to be a maester, Jon thought. I left the home and siblings I loved, had Lord Stark asked. Jon would have joined the criminals of the Night's Watch, or even went to Essos in exile. Has Lord Tully sent any ravens to the Vale? Jon asked. He has been sick for 3 years and bedridden for the last 6 months. Lord Tully's alliances have withered away. That may be the reason why the Lannisters were so confident they could pillage the Riverlands. Robb said, Catelyn Stark's kidnapping of Tyrion sparked the war, but Tywin's reaction might have been more measured with a stronger House Tully. What have you promised the Riverlords? Jon asked. Only my sympathy, but I wanted to ask your thoughts. Oh, and Edmure Tully wishes to hold a tournament in the middle of a war, to give thanks to the freeing of Riverrun. Robb said, Do we even have enough food or gold to hold a tournament? Jon asked quizzically. It gets worse. Edmure spoke of the tourney to his friends, Mark Piper, Lemond Goodbrook, and Patrak Mallister. Robb said, So he looks weak, if you tell him no. A Tully who was captured in front of his castle and who lacks power despite his father's absence, Jon said. Robb shook his head and looked into his cup of water. I feel sorry for Edmure. He is a nice enough fellow, but not meant for war. I don't know if I am either. I thought war was all battles and fighting like the songs, the stag versus the dragon on Ruby Ford. Instead, it is worrying about food, morale, and getting over a fucking bridge without being stabbed in the back. It is knowing you cannot protect people from beasts like Clegane. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping cold water. If Robb Stark was not meant for war, then no one was. His brother was gifted at tactics and had killed 10,000 enemies, taken 2,000 as prisoners, and broken the siege in less than a week with a few hundred casualties. For a moment, Jon wished the fighting ended and that his family, unbroken and united, could return home. But Bran was already broken, and Jon turned his mind to the present. Robbie cannot promise the Riverlords revenge. The Northern Army marched to bring Lord Stark back. We might trade Jaime Lannister for father and other lords for Sansa and Arya. Tywin Lannister would ask us to cease fighting, and it would be difficult to refuse. Yes, I know, but father would also want to protect the Rivermen. And as for Gregor, Clegane, and Vargo Hoat, they deserve the block. Robb said bitterly, "Of course, Tywin Lannister may give unacceptable terms, so we may still defend the Rivermen. But we must enter the negotiation with an open mind. But that does not mean we cannot prepare for war. Even as we talk, we can strengthen our position," Jon said. "If we had the Knights of the Vale," Robb said. "But we do not, and we must play the cards we have. It is no good wishing for allies that are not here. You should allow Edmure Tully to have this tournament," Jon said. "What? Did Robert Baratheon hold a joust before the Trident?" Robb asked. "Of course not, but the tourney is not to celebrate Riverrun. It is to honor Hoster Tully and his life. It will unite the Riverrun and explain why he has been missing when his bannermen were attacked. They will hear of the tourney far and wide. It may even shame the Vale to send men to our aid," Jon said. "So Edmure will regain face with the Riverlords. Do you think Lady Arryn will change her mind?" Robb asked. "I don't know, but if she does not send emissaries for her dying father, then she is truly lost. But at least then, the Lords of the Vale will know the shame of their actions, as high as honor. How honorable is it to abandon your father and siblings? Also, if it is to honor an old and sick man, we can spend less for food and prizes," Jon said. "Always counting coppers?" Robb yapped. "We must. War is not just men in shiny armor on horses. It is food, supplies, protecting small folk, and gold. It is getting more troops so you can outlast your opponents. It is breaking your enemy down by any means possible," Jon said. "I heard what you did in the Whispering Wood, and the examples you made of the 3 men, Robb said. "Some have said it was cruel, but I understand. You did what you had to do." Jon let out his breath. "I am glad you agree, Robb. I have a request. You may not like this, but I believe it will change the war. We have 2,000 prisoners. Give me full authority over them, their treatment, their prisons, their release. And what will you get from them?" Robb asked. "Gold and information." Jon refused to say any more. "I suppose I don't want to know how you will do this," Robb said. "I will not use torture. I was raised by Lord Stark, but the prisoners are a serious weakness for the Lannisters. We hold the lords whose castles form the borders of the Westerlands. Banefort and Westerling guard the north, and Crakehall and Prester hold the eastern and southern tips," Jon said. "If we control those 4, the Rock is isolated. You are my brother in all but name. You have my blessing. I also have a request for you. You must be more than the Master of Whispers or a healer. I want you to lead men in battle." Robb took out a map of the Riverlands. "The best way to maneuver is to break off small armies, march quickly and confuse the enemy, and reassemble before battle. I do not know if the other lords can be trusted. The powerful ones, like Lord Bolton and Karstark, have their own motives. The weaker ones may not be able to command. But I know if you lead men, you will make the right choices, even under great pressure," Robb said. "That is not a request, Robb. You know I would gladly lead troops for you," Jon said. "You need to train with weapons. Men want to know whether you can fight," Robb said bluntly. "I haven't picked up a sword for 4 years," Jon said. "Well, you have to learn how to spar again, Snow." Robb smiled. "You just want to beat me in the yard," Jon said. "I wish I could. Instead, I have to wine and dine these lords and listen to their endless complaints. Janos Bracken and Titus Blackwood are feuding over a sawmill. The Rivermen want more representatives than just Olyvar Frey, Patrek Mallister, and Lucas Blackwood in my honor guard. Raymoon Derry was killed by the Mountain, and his 9-year-old son is now lord. My lady mother says if I do not help, the Freys will try to control him through his cousins. It never ends. I had no idea that lordship was so unpleasant." Robb sighed. "It will be better in the north. There, All you have to do is to turn down marriage proposals. At the tourney, you can crown a new queen of love and beauty and marry her, Jon joked. Very funny, Snow, Robb said. I could engage you to one of 24 Frey ladies. You wouldn't dare. I would run off faster than Arya from a lesson with the septa, Jon said. They both smiled, and for a moment the war was far away. My lords. Olyvar Frey entered the room after knocking loudly. Master Vyman was by his side, as well as the Blackfish, an urgent raven from the twins. Robb broke the seal of the 2 blue towers. He read it quickly, a small smile breaking out on his face. Harrion and Torrin have won a great victory at the Broken Bridge. They have slain 1,000 men and taken captive 200 more. Their prisoners include Kevan Lannister, Lewis Ledden, and Steffan Swift. Valuable hostages. Lyddon is Lord of the Deep Den, who controls the Gold Road. Swift is heir to Cornfield and the family is close to the Lannisters. Kevan is Tywin's right hand, the Blackfish said. They will be riding down with the valuable captives from the twins. Jon, you have total authority over the prisoners, Robb said. Sire Brendan, let the others know that my brother's orders are to be followed on these matters. I will announce this new victory at the feast tonight. Jon nodded. More prisoners that might be traded for gold or information. Sissel, Jaime, and Kevan Lannister alone should be enough to bring Eddard Stark and his sisters home. But Tywin Lannister was not considered one of the most dangerous men in Westeros for nothing. If the war continued, then he had 2,000+ prisoners. He would use them to break the West open for House Stark. I think the dungeon is in the other direction, Snow, Jaime Lannister quipped. Jon steered the group of knights and lords through the courtyard past the curious gaze of prisoners, small folk, and Stark bannermen. These were the most valuable captives. Sire Jaime, his 3 cousins, Lord Brax, and his eldest son, Lord Banifort, Lord Westerling, Lord Estrin, Sire Greenfield, and Lord Crakehall. Sire Fordley Prester had escaped to the east. They were guarded by dozens of Mormont men and women, and several other members of Robb's guard, Lucas Blackwood, Donal Locke, and Eddard Karstark. They approached a long slate-roofed keep, squat and square, that stuck out like a sore thumb in the Riverrun grounds. The keep was 35 feet high, with windows only near the very top. The outside bricks were battered and worn smooth, making it difficult to climb up or down. There was only one large red door, draped with dust and spider cobwebs, and that could be seen easily from both the north and west tower of the castle. What is this place? Jaime asked, his eyes peering up at the high windows and uneven ceiling. The summit was jagged and the stones on top were loose. Hoster Tully used this keep to house his children when they were young. He often traveled away to other parts of the Riverlands. When he was gone, he wanted his daughters to stay here. After their marriages, the tower was abandoned, Jon said. A maiden vault. Hoster Tully had a maiden vault built to protect the virtue of his daughters. Jaime said incredulously and then laughed out loud. Well, it didn't work. What do you mean? Jon said. Petyr Baelish claims that he took the maidenheads of both Tully's sisters. He was fostered at Riverrun. Jaime said. And does Petyr Baelish always tell you the truth? Jon replied. He thought for a second and then smiled. You are trying to provoke me, Sir Jaime, to get a reaction or have me defend my family. But Lady Stark is no relative of mine, and she will deny Baelish's lie. You can believe what you want, bastard. Jaime said, Does Baelish work for your family? Is he one of Tywin's spies, like Maester Pyxell? Jon said. I will not tell you anything, Jaime said, shutting his mouth like an insolent child. You already have, Sir Jaime, Jon said. He opened the tower door with a large iron key. The tower smelled faintly of dampness and decay. But Jon doubted that was permanent. The rooms had not been used since the end of Robert's Rebellion, and Lady Stark had always remarked that she was her father's favorite child. The entry hall opened onto a stone staircase, and there were rooms on either side for guards. Jon would post men both inside and outside the tower, and at the base of the stairs, it would be pitiful for a thief to enter unseen or a captive to escape. Without fighting, a strong smell of flowers hit Jon's nose. Herb lore was not his favorite topic, but he could detect chamomile, rosemary, and an even stronger smell. Sen spilled scented water from a pitcher on the ground, while young girls strewed bunches of dried daisies, fennel, and violets. For 1 copper star per bunch, Atsa's helpers had eagerly collected dozens of plants and herbs this afternoon, Jon urged them to continue, but not so aggressively that they stripped the fields bare. "What is that smell?" Chet asked, wrinkling his nose. "Lavender. The water is mixed with lavender petals." "Jerry found lavender growing at the edge of the tumblestone," Satin said. "It smells like a brothel," Chet remarked. "You mean it smells nice?" "Lavender oil is readily available, unlike expensive unguents and perfumes," Satin said. Even in arguments, Satin's voice was lyrical and sweet. "Why are we here? Do you wish me to smell flowers? Am I to sleep in Lady Catelyn's childhood bed?" the Kingslayer japed. Jon turned to the guarded faces of the prisoners. Only the young lion was unchanged by his imprisonment. Besides Crakehall, the other lords concealed their fear behind empty bluster, and the younger cousins did not even hide their alarm. The ride from the Whispering Wood had taught them the extent of northern savagery. "That's exactly what you are here for. The 11 of you will be kept in this tower. As the most valuable prisoner, Sir Jaime, you can choose your own bed. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Lady Stark's old boudoir," Jon added. The Mormonts herded the perplexed lords and knights up the stairs. The doors were heavy and thick, reinforced with iron studs, but the rooms were comfortable. If small, the desks, tables, and chairs were of childish size, and blankets and curtains needed to be aired. They had climbed to the highest floor. There were 4 or 5 bedrooms, but the largest held a sumptuous canopied bed. The headboard of white poplar wood, well seasoned, was surrounded by decorative frames of the great events of House Tully's history. The pledging of faith to Aegon the Conqueror, the defeat of Harren the Black, and the ascension of Edmund Tully as Hand of the King, after Orys Baratheon resigned. All 3 panels were related to House Targaryen, and Hoster Tully had betrayed those ties with his daughter's marriages. "Wonderful. I can sleep under a bunch of leaping trout," Jaime snarked. The carvings on the posts were silver trout in mid-jump. "Look," Satin said in an excited voice. "They even have a bath." In the corner of the adjacent room, there was a wooden tub with a tent-like canopy over it with more carvings of fish. The tub was surrounded by large jugs and pots, and Jon felt sorry for the maids and servants that had to truck hot water up and down several flights of stairs. Perhaps they should just dump the dirty water out the window. The Tullys had clearly never heard of pipes, and Jon dreamed one day of building a giant water bridge to tap far-off mountain springs. Such an abundance of water could be used to irrigate fields, supply public baths and fountains, and scour a sewer system. "Maester Snow, will we be truly allowed to stay here?" Willem Lannister asked. "Yes, so long as you are at Riverrun," Jon said. 10 prisoners were happy. Jaime Lannister was not. "What are you playing at, Snow? Riverrun has dungeons. Why put us here?" he said. Jon turned, a cold smile on his face. "Would you rather stay in a cell underground and sleep on the floor, covered in your piss and shit, in the dark and the cold?" "No, but I want to know why you did this," Jaime said, his eyes uncomfortable. "Our stay will be quite tolerable," Lord Yatstern said. The slightly portly noble with the big chin turned jovial at the new accommodations. "We are high-born knights, and no doubt chivalry dictates that we are to be treated with kindness. Or they fear Lord Tywin's wrath if we are abused," Quentin Baniford said, eliciting chuckles from the Northerners. "You two are idiots," Jaime snapped. "You saw their kindness when they roped us together and ripped off the arm of that Lorch man. Snow, why are you doing this?" "You are here because it serves me. You will be given food and drink, and you will not be mistreated," Jon said. "And if you try to escape..." Jerry and Lyra Mormont stepped forward, carrying 2 black spiked maces. They aimed at a small table and smashed the wood into several broken shards. They took particular care to break the table legs into pulp. "Do you need us to demonstrate more?" Lyra said. Jon shook his head. "If you attempt to escape, the guards have orders to break both of your legs, and then I will think of worse things. You are prisoners of House Stark, and prisoners you will stay." Jon motioned to his Wintertown boys. Before they departed, he wanted a thorough search of each prisoner to ensure no contraband, messages, or weapons. There would be guards posted on every floor, but he would take no chances. "Snow, do you plan to trade us?" Jaime said. "If your father is willing to free my father, then a deal can be made. If he is not, or my sisters are harmed, then you will stay a very long time. In comfort, but not in honor. Good day. I will have food sent up from the feast," Jon said, and left. He posted a pair of guards on each floor and a much larger contingent near the tower entrance. Jon tried hard not to gag at the 5th dish of trout. So far, the Tullys had served smoked trout pate with dark bread, grilled trout with vegetables, roast trout with lemon and butter, another dish of smoked trout sweetened with honey, and trout pan-fried on a bed of potatoes. He never wanted to see another trout in his life, although he supposed he would be forced to make an exception for the Blackfish and Lady Catelyn. Jon sniffed at the 6th course, a fish pie. The flaky crust was bronzed to a golden finish. He cautiously speared it with a knife. The insides were a mixture of cod, salmon, and haddock poached in a white sauce with buttery mashed potatoes. Jon ate the insides first and then spooned the remaining sauce over the crust. It was delicious, but most importantly, not trout. "You wouldn't happen to have any more balsamic vinegar?" Wendell Manderly asked, hopefully. Jon shook his head. The younger Manderly brother had spread the tale of the miracle tonic far and wide, and many lords were interested. Jon sat with the Manderlys and Eddard Stark. They sat next to the high table where Robb Stark and the Tullys presided over the feast. The Mormon girls had been charged by Lady Mage to take first watch over prisoners. "I would love to make more, and do so in the north," Jon said. "We could ship it from White Harbor and sell it everywhere," an excited Wylist declared. "Only if the Manderlys do not eat and drink it all in their banquets," Jon thought. "I would need wine grapes, though, and grapes do not grow well. North of the neck, the climate of the arbor and Dorne works better." "Surely you are clever enough to work around that," Wendell pleaded. "Well, I could use hot springs and a glass garden, and a water drip before the fruit ripens. It would definitely be an interesting project," Jon said to the great delight of the Manderlys. Robb Stark stood at the high table and banged his goblet on the table. "My lords and knights, I have an announcement to make. Eddard Stark, rise and come to the high table." The surprised young man bounded up with a few long strides. "We received a raven this night from the twins. I ask you to read it." As Eddard scanned the letter, his jaws clenched. "It is a letter from Harrion and Torrin." The trap worked. His eyes looked to Jon. Robb smiled in encouragement for Eddard to continue. "Dear Lord Robb, Torrin lured the fools over the bridge. I destroyed the bridge with the help of the Manderly captain and the Wintertown boy. 1,000 Lannister men are dead, and we have captured 200, including Kevin, the Lesser Lannister, Louis Lydon, and Stefan Swift. We have suffered few losses and ride south with the prisoners to meet you. Harrion Stark, heir to Carhold." Eddard finished reading. He could hardly keep his excitement in check. Such a stunning victory would be remembered for a long time. Cheers erupted from the Stark contingent, and even the Umbers joined the applause. The Mormonts, Glovers, Manderlys, and Flints also celebrated. In the Great Hall, Northmen reminisced about how they built the structure in a mere 7 days. "We now have Tywin's brother and his son," Robb said. "You destroyed the bridge." "That was our bridge," Ryman Frey said. "The Northern Army constructed the bridge, and we used it as a weapon against the Lannister forces," Robb said coldly. "But you agreed to give us the bridge. You stole it from us." Ryman was the loudest, but other Freys muttered in the shadows. "You would have destroyed it anyway. Maester Snow knew that, and found a better trick. My brothers kept the old lion at the Green Fork so Lord Stark could save River. Their victory added to our victory." Eddard shouted back, "You're still a thief. The bridge was promised to us," Ryman said. "We demand compensation." He turned suspicious. Beady eyes toward Jon. "Ryman Frey, we are fighting the Lannisters, and all you care about it is a stinking bridge. What next? Do you plan to charge us for the raven from your castle?" The Blackfish said, "My lords, we should give thanks for the great victory that Harrion and Torrin claimed. Manderlys, Cranadween, Tallhearts, Freys all helped. And of course, my brother Jon Snow," Robb said. Another wave of hooting and feet stamping broke out, drowning out the Freys. Jon looked at the frame table. Many looked sullen, but the angriest were Ryman and his 3 sons. Edwin, the oldest son and 4th in the line of succession, sneered, making his pinched nose and pale face look even more constipated. Petter Pimple frowned, muttering to a big, fleshy man next to him. Jon did not know the name. There were many big, fleshy Freys. Black Walder, wiry and thin, scowled and his hand clenched at the dagger at his hip. That one had a reputation as a fighter, but he was most like his grandfather, irascible, determined, and easy to anger. Blackwalder would not forget a grudge. Nearly 20% of Robb's forces were Frey's, and Jon wondered if any of them could be trusted. Robb pounded the table again for silence again. "We have another matter to discuss, and a serious one. I ask for silence." Edmure Tully stood up. He was garbed in Tully colors, his tunic embroidered with silver fish and wearing a quilted doublet of red wool with a leaping trout. He looked better than the mess at the maesters that afternoon. "My lords, thank you for coming to Riverrun. My father, Hoster Tully, is dying. He has been sick for many years, which is why he could not fight at the siege. House Tully will hold a 3-day tourney to celebrate his life. Robb Stark has told me that the rest of the force will arrive in a week, and House Stark and House Tully invite all who wish to come and pay their respects. We will send ravens out with these announcements," Edmure said. Tytos Blackwood, Carol Vance, Clement Piper, Janos Bracken, and Jason Mallister all stood. To Hoster, a great man. The Northmen politely clapped. They knew little about Lord Tully, but they had to applaud for Eddard Stark's good father and Robb Stark's grandfather. The Freys sat stone-faced, ignoring the antics of the other rivermen. There were many other houses in the Riverlands. Jon wondered how many of them would come to the tourney and repledge their fealty. In Robert's rebellion, quite a few had not answered their banners. In fact, many, the most prominent being House Darry, House Mouton, had stayed loyal to the Targaryens and lost a great deal of their wealth and power. Jon thought more about the dying Hoster Tully. He had birthed 2 girls and married them to powerful men. He was considered great, only because he chose the right side in the war. Had Rhaegar triumphed at Ruby Ford, no one would care for Hoster Tully's passing. He would have been attainted or taken the black. Jon left the feast early, tired of the dirty looks by the Freys, the ridiculous abundance of trout, and men getting rip-roaring drunk. Like Robb, he enjoyed a drink or two, but the alcohol-induced bragging went too far. Several Freys declared that they would win the tournament and crown their sisters the Queen of Love and Beauty. Theon claimed that with a fleet of longships, he could sack Casterly Rock, and the Rivermen ranted about preferring to die than ever bending the knee to anyone with a drop of Lannister blood. Jon wondered if they truly understood what they were saying. The Riverlands were easily invaded, and even if they declared the Starks their overlords, Winterfell was 600 miles from Harroway, the center of the Riverlands. Only a strong king could ensure the safety of the Rivermen, not the Lord Paramount of the North. Jon walked back to his quarters near the Ravenry at the northern wall of the castle. Sir Brynden had found housing for the Wintertown boys, and there was room enough for Satin Jerry and the other helpers to stay. The small folk of the castle had embraced the motley crew, no doubt to cadge tidbits of information about the exploits of the Northern Army. Jon saw Clydas whispering to a strapping serving wench who carried trenchers of bread, cheese, and a pitcher of ale to the Wintertown boys. The girl gasped at the sight of Ghost, and after a sharp and painful elbow to Clydas's ribs, stepped forward to curtsy. "Milord," she said. "I am no lord, thank you for bringing bread and drink to my boys," Jon said. "I am sure Clydas will be happy to tell you more about our battles. He made valuable contributions to defeating the Lannisters." Jon left the proud boy to speak of his exploits. He walked into the common area. Dinner was finished, and every single plate had been demolished with the fish bones picked clean. Jon wondered if the whores loved trout or the battling armies had entirely deprived the small folk of food. The Wintertown boys dragged many straw beds to one side of the room. A few red curtains, scavenged from destroyed tents, hung on the opposite side for the privacy of the whores. Both groups nibbled at freshly baked bread and drank ale. Chet labeled many pieces of parchment with Westerland House sigils. Satin and Jerry looked on the paper with keen interest, but the girls anxiously stood in a line as if they would be inspected like horses. "Chet, when did you sleep last?" Jon asked. 40 hours ago, same as you," the boy said. "Master, is it true what they say?" Dinny asked. "That depends. What do they say?" Jon asked. "That a great victory was won at the Green Fork with the bridge, and that many mighty knights and lords were captured." Dinny said, "Well, they took 200 prisoners. As for mightiness, one of them was Ser Cavan Lannister, younger brother to Tywin. He is second only to Yuma in his value," Jon said. "Did you really build a bridge across the Trident in 7 days?" "The entire castle has been wondering whether it was a tall tale like Grumpkins and Snarks," Jerry said. "I did not build a bridge. We built a bridge. The entire Northern Army, More than 10,000 men cutting timber, manning boats, pounding the piles deep into the river. The Umbers and the Karstarks put aside their differences and did much of the heavy lifting. Far more can be done working together than alone. We win battles as an army, not as individual men, Jon said. But, Sir, Ched objected, the army could never have built a bridge without your guidance. None of the lords had any clue how to create such a structure. A man who has to boast does not have much to brag about. Arthur Dayne did not speak of his sword skills, and no one doubted him. Everyone knows who oversaw the bridge, Jon said. Milord, a pretty young girl stuttered. Do you wish female company tonight? I and any of my sisters would be happy to offer. It would be free, of course, sir. What is your name? Jon said. Bethany, milord. And this is Cass and Lanny. The other girls looked nervously down at the floor. Only Bethany was brave enough to make eye contact for a few seconds. You do not need to sell yourself, none of you. I will make certain that you have food to eat and a place to stay. And if you would leave, I will try to find you a place in the north. For now, I will pay you 10 stags a day, so long as I am able, Jon said. But how long will that be? Your purse had 20 gold dragons, but you have paid 5 as advances on our wages. You have purchased another 5 dragons of herbs, honey, and dressings. Will you be able to replenish your purse, or must we leave in a month? Jerry asked. I cannot guarantee how long the army stays at Riverrun, but in terms of gold, I have ideas. And you all can play a role, if you wish. Satin, I would like you to be my steward. You will see that the boys and the girls are properly looked after. Jerry, I would like you to teach the others. My crew were trained to operate the trebuchets and catapults, but they have never been instructed in reading and writing. I would compensate both of you well for this. And Aisha, Jon looked around, puzzled. Where is Aisha? Her young son clenched his fists before glaring at Jon. My mother is not comfortable in the castle. She does not trust highborns. Jerry's comment garnered a look of sympathy from many in the room. The Starks of Winterfell were admired for their honor, but small folk in the north had heard many dark stories about other lords. I promised food and drink. I mean to keep my word to her, Jon said. I need someone who can ensure a sufficient supply of herbs and medicine. She would do better than most masters. Maester, we purchased some bread and cheese this afternoon with a few silver stags, Satin said. I will bring breakfast to her in the morning. Jon nodded. The boy whore accepted the position steward, and the Wintertown lads began to drift off to sleep. Jon gave orders to servants that the girls would have whatever sheets and bedding needed to be comfortable. Before he retired for the night, the young blonde boy caught up to him in the hall. I am sorry, sir, for my presumption. I merely wish to protect my mother. No apology is needed. I understand entirely. It is the right thing to do, and you are a good lad, Jon said. May I ask what happened? I don't know exactly. She fled to the Riverlands before my birth. I think the Westermen killed my father, Jerry said. When I ask her, she only says that the lions took him away. The book is his then. De Materia Medica, Jon said. Yes, my mother told him that she wanted to be a healer. He gave her many books. She was forced to sell several to live, but she kept that one, Jerry said. How do you spell your name? Jon asked. G-E-R-I-O-N, the boy said. Jon thought for a moment. I would not use that name in front of others. Why not, Sarah? The boy asked. Jury is the name of a small folk, but Jurion is a noble name. Be careful that those who harmed your mother do not find her again, Jon said. Thank you, sir, Jerry said, relieved before hesitating. You are not angry at me. Will you still employ my mother to collect herbs? Of course. She has been a great help, and she led me to Satin and your friends, and I am glad to find a teacher for my crew. Jon smiled at the eager blonde boy. Few boys of your age read so well. You have a bright mind, and a desire to keep it sharp. Those are rare qualities. Truly, I have dreamed of studying at the Citadel and become a maester, Jerry said. You should set your goals higher. Most masters are not very smart, Jon said, thinking of lazy leeway. Good night, Jerry, and in the morning relay my request to your mother. Jon dreamed that night of a great battle in an open field of flowers. A tall, powerful man rode at the head of an army wearing black and red plate and a distinctive war helm with bat-like steel dragon wings. His tabard was a three-headed black dragon on a field of red, and the man drew a great Valyrian steel bastard sword as he charged a force of Valymen and Targaryen loyalists. The grass and flowers turned red with blood as men died by the thousands. The black dragon fought like the warrior made flesh, and in the songs of the bards that should have carried the day. At Redgrass Field, though, the raven's teeth gained the high ground, and with the rebel standard fluttering 300 yards away, the longbowmen rained down volley after volley of arrows on the field, killing the first Blackfire and two other boys that lifted the standard. The boys could not have been older than 10 and 2 and died bravely. They may have been boys, but they were traitors. The voice came from a thin, gaunt man with milk-white skin, long white hairs, and a red eye. The other eye had been gouged out in that same battle. He carried a tall white weirwood bow, and there was a blotch on his right cheek, like a raven drawn in blood. He wore scarlet, black, and smoke, and his red doublet bore his personal sigil, a white-winged dragon breathing scarlet flame. Brynden Rivers. I seem to meet quite a few Bryndens these days, Jon said. They were not named for me, although my mother was a Blackwood. She named me Brynden at her breast. But men have called me Bloodraven for a very long time, he said. Why do you appear in my dream, and why do I dream of the rebellion? Jon said. He chuckled, his one red eye sinister and pale. Why do you think? If I knew, I would not have to ask. Jon replied, Perhaps you are not as cunning as I thought, Bloodraven said. You have dragon dreams. They sing to you of the past, of your future. You dream of ancient Valyria and all of its glory. You wish to rebuild the freehold and restore what was lost in the doom, by fire and blood. In dreams you fly. You are no fool. Only dragons fly dragons. I have wolf dreams, too, Jon said. Bloodraven snorted, and the lines on his hard chalk white face, sharpened like flesh, pulled too tightly over his skull. Dreams where you eat elk and boars, or kill a few witless men, those are merely the fancies of a warg, and you have had those only since your dire wolf pup. How long have you dreamt of dragons? Since I saw the obsidian candles in the citadel. One day I will light the black candles with my mind alone, Jon thought. The maesters feared their own limitations and claimed that magic had left the world. They were wrong. What had been done once could be done again. 4 years, Jon said. The day is coming when you cannot deny who you are. When you cannot run from your name, the world will see you for what you are. My name is Jon Snow, bastard born of Ned Stark, Jon said. A false name to escape a false king. Why would Jon Snow dream of dragons? Did you have dragon dreams, sir? Jon asked. The Targaryens have long had prophetic visions, even before the conquest. When I was 10 and 6, I went to the Isle of Faces and had a waking dream. I saw a field reddened with blood and 2 standards. A red dragon on a black field and a black dragon on a red field at war. I saw a shower of arrows from a high ridge, raining down from weirwood bows. Bloodraven said, Weirwood bows. The Battle of Redgrass Field did not happen until many years later. Jon said, Because of the dream, I formed the Raven's Teeth, 300 longbowmen. History gives credit to Baelor and Maekar. But my longbows won the battle. I have not the time to form such a company. It would take many years to train men strong enough to pull such a bow, and there are no more weirwood groves in the south, Jon said. There are weirwood trees still on the Isle of Faces. You would cut down trees from a sacred grove? Jon asked, aghast. I carved a bow from a great weirwood tree on the isle. The vision was a blessing and a curse. I served as hand for 24 years, and I defeated 3 Blackfire rebellions. Bloodraven said, But you are an oathbreaker and a kinslayer. You killed 1 half-brother and 4 of his sons. Men curse your name still and claim you studied the dark arts. Jon said, What is honor to the lives of 100,000? I sacrificed my honor to give the reign of Aegon the Unlikely a chance. How safe would his rule be with a Blackfire plotting civil war? And what would you do to protect your family? If you were a maester, would you have broken your oath to rescue your sisters? I do not know, but I would not kill my half-brothers. Jon said stubbornly, We are more alike than you would care to admit. We are both bastards and rogues, and you have other half-brothers besides Robb. Bloodraven said, I do not plan to kill them either, Jon said. Brynden Rivers chuckled. We will see. Good luck in the wars to come. Remember your dreams. Jon woke with a start. Brynden Rivers was a fearsome man who had made hard decisions in a time of turmoil. He never wore the crown but ruled Westeros for 24 years, and been trusted by his half-brother Daeron the Good for a decade before that. No one would ever describe the Blood Raven as good, but he had served the kingdom well. Was there a better hand for crisis than the Blood Raven? Jon could not think of any. How many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have? The riddle ran. He had enough to defeat his enemies. Jon waited until mid-morning for the prisoners in the Children's Keep to break their fast. The servants delivered soft boiled eggs, small slices of rustic bread, butter, and sharp white cheese. There was no ale, only cold river water, casks, and wagons of ale. Mead and wine remained, but they would be saved for the northern host that would arrive in a week's time. Guards rousted the 11 prisoners down the stairs, but Jon made it clear there would be no rough treatment. Jaime Lannister was in the lead, a trademark smirk on his handsome face. "What part of the castle are we touring today, Snow?" Jaime said. "A much less pleasant area," Jon replied. The smell hit them before they opened any doors. The fetid stink of thousands of men jammed into a small space. The heavy oak dungeon door opened and the odor became more noxious. The Western lords gagged, trying to hold on to their morning meal. There were 40 cells, hewed out of rough stone, damp with water. Guards readied their weapons as Jon commanded the cell doors be opened. The dark dungeons at Riverrun could hold 400 people. There were 5 times that number. There was barely any space to sleep, and men had shat and pissed in their clothes. The food was scraps of bread, and the drink was moldy water. It would take a strong stomach to eat and drink in such a wretched place. Only the most truculent prisoners were in irons. The sharp spears and studded maces of the guards were enough to dissuade any thought of revolt. The dungeon seemed warm, like the hell of the Septons, but that was the combined heat and musk of the men. "What is the meaning of this, Sered?" "Some of these men are knights and of noble blood," Lord Bainfort said. "They are prisoners that we could have easily killed on the battlefield. They have been given enough not to die, but not enough to live," Jon said. "They will die from overcrowding and disease. You have only a few latrines for a few thousand men. They will get sick from the food and water, and this place makes the black cells look like the king's chambers," Jaime said. "Yes, while you stay in the maiden vault and sleep on feather beds, your men stay here." Jon held up his hand for attention, and the prisoners turned their gaze entirely to him. "I am here to offer terms. Any of you can leave, if you pay a ransom in gold. You will swear on the Seven and the old gods and the new that you will not return to the Riverlands, nor attack the north. And if you do so, we will send you back to the Westerlands," Jon said. "How much gold?" a voice yelled from the back. "That depends, sir. The squire will pay less than a spearman. A spearman will pay less than a crossbowman. A knight will pay the most. The price will not be cheap, but you will be free, so long as you swear not to attack the Northern Army or the Riverlands," Jon said. "What about us? How much do we need to pay?" Lord Athstrin asked. "You are a lord. Unless you surrender your castle, you will remain my guest until the war ends. But you will stay in comfort, sleeping on beds in the tower," Jon said. "Men cannot be ransomed before lords," Quentyn Bainfort said. "My knights are too loyal to yield," Roland Craycall cried. "Tywin Lannister will kill anyone who deserts," Tytos Brack said. "If it was 1 or 2 men or even 100, but 2,000, will he chop off 2,000 heads? There is strength in numbers, and Tywin Lannister is to our east. He has to fight the north and then the Baratheons. How large will his army be when that is done?" Jon said. The dungeon came alive with murmurs. Men looked at each other and their lords. Their lords were well rested and well fed. The men were neither. A greasy smear of butter could be seen on Lord Craycall's tunic. "We don't have gold here, Saenor. We have lost our horses and armor." "How would we pay?" The voice was from a different cell. "You will sign a note, a pledge of your payment, or you may send letters to your kin and ask them to raise the ransom. You can pay less now or more later. What would happen to your family if you died? Your wife or your children? How will they fare?" Jon asked. "Don't listen to the bastard. Tywin Lannister will save you," Lord Westerling said. "Tywin Lannister may save Sir Jaime or Sir Kevin, who will be my guest soon." "Will he pay for you?" Will the old lion even know if you lived or died in battle? I do not want to treat you poorly. I have given you bread and water and cells to sleep in. But how much food do we have? Sir Jaime and the other great lords are too valuable to starve. But as the war goes on, when the northern army runs out of bread, what will you eat? When your cellmates die of disease, will you die or just suffer for a long time? Jon said. The old lion will free us. He will lay siege to Riverrun. Lord Brax insisted. Jon chuckled. You are a fool. A prancing unicorn suits you well. What happens when there is no food? How well do prisoners eat in a siege? If we ran out of stones, we will use your bodies for the catapults, whether you are alive or dead. My brother and I would be quite happy if Tywin Lannister attempted a siege. We are not the Tots. We destroyed your forces with 5,000 men. Soon we will have 10,000 more. By all means, Lord Brax, ask House Lannister to come attack the castle. Jon said. What if we cannot pay? What if our families have no gold? A nameless prisoner cried. Even without gold, you may have secrets to trade. There are many things I wish to know. How many forces does Tywin's host have? Which lords march and which of their sons stay home? The defenses of the Westerlands. I am sure there are other things you can tell, Jon said. You will not succeed. Our men will not become informers, Lord Brax said. Jon ignored the prancing unicorn and spoke to the prisoners in the dungeon. Then you can pay with gold. Remember this, a secret can lose value quickly. Best tell me soon or you will have nothing to trade. You can be brave and noble and die in a cell forgotten and your bones will lie here forever. Or you can pay and swear on your gods that you will not fight the North, and keep that oath. If I find you again, if you raise your hand to House Stark, you will lose both hands. The guards herded the prisoners back to their cells. Darkness and hunger would convince them more than Jon ever could. The idea of freedom had been introduced. Now he would merely wait for prisoners to crack. There were mutterings about honor and treachery as they walked back to the keep. He ignored these remarks. The lords were not the ones who would negotiate their ransom. If Bloodraven could withstand the scorn of the entire 7 kingdoms, then he could tolerate the anger of 11 Lannister bannermen. He delivered the prisoners back to Hoster Tully's daughter vault. As they trudged up the stairs, Jon checked the security on every floor. Only certain servants would be allowed in the keep, and any strangers would be turned away, no matter what they claimed. They could claim to be the High Septon, but that would not matter. The guards had strict orders, and Jon chose only those whose loyalty to House Stark was unquestioned. Longtime Winterfell men, his personal crew, Mormonts and Crenogmen. You are a bastard, born of lust and lies, Goblin Westerling said with a glare. Guilty of the first, as for the second, only my lord father would know. Jon quipped. Our men have honor. They have given oaths to their lords. They will not fall for your deceit. They swore to give their lives for ours, Tydos Brax said. Jon looked about the bedroom chambers with light and air and trout-infested furniture. Your lives are fine, my lords, unless you try to escape, in which case you may be relocated from this tower. Tell me, would any of you care to switch with your men to live in filth and hunger for a scrap of bread? Would you trade your pillows and feather beds for a hard stone floor and the light of the keep for the dungeon? Jon said. You know we won't do that, Snow. Sir Jaime said. Of course not. Your men may be brave, but easier for men to volunteer to die than to suffer with patience. And what for? Why stay in a miserable prison when with a stroke of the pen you can be free? All you need to do is to pay with promises and an oath, Jon said. At the cost of your honor, Sir Jaime said. And how is your honor, Sir Jaime? Have none of you done anything to besmirch your vows? 2,000 men will value not honor more than their lives. They want to survive, to live and fight another day, Jon said. They will betray you too. They will break their vows and return to battle. They will not pay your ransom, Westerling said. Perhaps, but not before they break their oaths to you, Jon said. You are scum. The High Septon says that all bastards are born to betrayal. You are an abomination in the eyes of the 7, Tydos Brax said. Lucky I worship the old gods then. Jon smiled as he walked away. The Western lords were focused on honor and oaths. They should have been more concerned about secrets. How many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have? Brynden Rivers and his paramour, Shiera, may have delved into sorcery, but the Bloodraven also had informers everywhere, ready to sniff out plots and betray liege lords. Jon had 2,000 Westermen stuffed into a miserable dank dungeon. How many eyes could be converted from them? How many Lannister secrets would be ferreted out? Enough to take castles or only to make Tywin uncomfortable? Jon was certain the old lion was the key. Tywin Lannister would have skeletons in his closet. Find them, and House Stark would win. Hoster Blackwood handled ravens with a skill that Walgrave, the demented archmaester of Ravencraft at the Citadel, would admire. Hostos had taken charge of 24 birds borrowed from Raventree Hall and 8 more at Riverrun. Day and night, the tall, gangly boy coaxed the 30-plus ravens to fly to castles near and far. The birds returned swiftly, chattering happily when they saw the boy, roosting on Hoster like a weirwood tree in an ancient godswood. Every single raven had been needed to carry messages, a proclamation of the great northern victory, invitations to a 3-day tournament celebrating Hoster Tully's life, and lists of prisoners held in the dungeons to be ransomed. But the ravens could not solve the problem being discussed at the small meeting held in the Riverrun Solar. How to send a message to Tywin Lannister. Lord Stark, without the location of the Lannister camp, any raven from the castle would be flying blind over the Riverlands, Hoster Blackwood said. There were legends of the first men that ravens could speak words and fly to many different castles. But that knowledge had been lost long ago with the Children of the Forest. Have the scouts sighted the host? Jon asked. The army came down the Green Fork to the inn at the crossroads, but we do not know where they might set up. Harrenhal is the strongest defensive location, but Tywin could also keep his forces at Harroway or set up a barricade on the river road at the Ruby Ford. There are at least several different groups, each with a leader. Sarah Marbrand, Clegane, Lord Lefford, and Tywin Lannister. The scouts cannot tell where the old lion will be, the Blackfish said. Wouldn't a raven to Harrenhal be the best solution? Lady Stark asked. The mercenaries are posted there, and Emery Lorch, all scum. The message might get to Tywin Lannister. It might be stolen. These sellswords are not to be trusted. They could ignore the letter, claiming to have shot down the raven. They could sell the information to others at King's Landing, and even if they would forward the message, it may take days for the letter to reach him. The Blackfish said, if there is any way to free my father from the Black Cells, it should be done quickly. We could send a force under a flag of Parley East on the River Road. Robb said, you cannot go. Tywin Lannister might have you arrested. Catelyn Stark cried, I know that, mother. I am not a fool. I mean to send someone I trust, Robb said. I could go for you, Robb. Lord Laxter will not arrest me, Catelyn said. Lady Stark seemed to forget that she had arrested Tyrion Lannister and that her negotiations with Walder Frey had not impressed, Jon thought. Robb shook his head. The person we send will only bear a message. We will conduct talks on the exchange of Jaime Lannister for my father here, Robb said. Tywin Lannister will not come to Riverrun, Catelyn said. And I will not go to him. I hold 11 valuable prisoners, his son and his only living brother. Tywin does not hold father, the Iron Throne does. If he wants them free, he can send someone to speak for him. Robb said, perhaps Lord Bolton or Lord Karstark should go. The Grachan is also senior enough to represent the North, Catelyn said. I need a messenger, not a negotiator. And I do not need Rose Bolton or Rickard Karstark to speak for me. I am the heir to Winterfell, and the army follows me. With father imprisoned, I act as Lord Paramount of the North. Jon, Robb said. You cannot send a bastard to Tywin Lannister, Catelyn said in alarm. Robb rolled his eyes. I would not send Jon. He is too valuable to me at Riverrun. And so is Sir Brynden. Jon, who do you think we should send? I could go, Lord Stark, Edmure Tully said. I would gladly tell Lord Lannister that you have his son as captive. Robb turned to Edmure. I thank you for the offer, but your father is ill. If he passes, then you would be the Lord of Riverrun, and Lord Paramount of the Trident. The Westermen may be tempted to disregard a parley and capture you. Robb said, Lord Edmure, you are also the host of this tournament. Tully Barrowman come to honor your father, and as Lord Paramount, you must hear their complaints and pledge to protect them. Jon said to Edmure's grateful nod, I would ask Jason Mollister to go. He is famed for both bravery and honor. He fought with Lannister men in the Greyjoy Rebellion, killing Balon Greyjoy's oldest son, and if he was captured, his heir is fighting in our army, so Seagard's loyalty is clear. It is a good suggestion, Lord Stark. The Silver Eagles are well respected, the Blackfish said. Lord Maester could also bring other rivermen with him. They could be your eyes and ears into what is happening at Harroway, Derry, Saltpans, and the River Road, and they would be happy to tweak the lion's nose, Jon said. Many of my companions would take joy in bringing unwelcome news to the Lannisters, Mark Piper, Lamond Goodbrook, Hugo Vance. They would all be happy to accompany Lord Jason, Edmure Tully said. Rudivar Frey walked through the red oak door and whispered a quick message in Jon's ear. Jon stood up. Master Vyman has time now to answer my questions. If I could take my leave, Lord Stark. Robb noted. Thank you, Jon. I will ask Lord Maester today. After the door closed, Catelyn Stark hissed at her son. Robb, are you certain you should let him handle the prisoners? I have heard stories of the suffering in the dungeons, and demands for ransom. His actions will give you a bad name. Of course there is suffering. Riverrun does not have space for 2,000 prisoners. It is not a large castle. Jon is getting as much gold and information out of them possible, Robb said. But gold. The North has no need for gold dragons. Only bastards are greedy and covetous for money, Jaden said. The gold ransoms are not to buy carpets, lace, or fancy clothes. The money will be used for food, iron, and supplies for the army. We are not the Lannisters pillaging and stealing from small folk. Villagers will be paid a fair price for any grain and meat we need. I do not want an army of thieves and robbers, Robb said. Snow won't be successful anyway. The bastard is allowing prisoners to escape if they sign a paper promising to pay. How will he ever collect? They will just run away, and maybe fight us again, Theon said. Men value their honor. If they swear on the Seven not to fight, many will believe they are cursed if they break their oath. And in the free cities, men sign parchment and pay their dues. The Iron Bank does not have trouble collecting its debts, and the prisoners fear Jon Snow. The Blackfish said, There are many dark stories spreading. How the bastard tore off a man's arms and legs with a horse and laughed when knights were burned alive on the battlefield. The servants say he consults witches for prophecies and magical potions, and that he uses the blood of patients to extract confessions, Lady Stark said. Confessions of what? That they are prisoners? I trust my brother. Jon will be fair. If he is harsh, then it is for a reason. When the captives return west, the lords and small folk will know that Northmen are to be feared, and we will get gold to pay for food. As prisoners leave, the dungeons will be less crowded. Jon has my full confidence, Robb said. Jon stood at the water gate with Master Vyban and Utherides Wayne, the head steward of Riverrun. Both servants of House Tully were old men, gaunt and sour and begrudging of unusual demands on their time. Satan, Jerry, and Chet trailed at a respectable distance as Jon looked over the rushing blue-white current on the northern side. He noted with interest that the tumblestone flowed more quickly than the muddy red-brown flow of the broad Red Fork. The red mud was very close to the Tully house colors. As the trident wended south, the land dipped, so there was a gentle slope down. And this is the water wheel, Vaemond said. The great wooden wheel had many vines of ivy climbing alongside it, and was situated near the wide arch and portcullis of the water gate. Nearly a third of the vertical wheel was submerged under the flowing water of the tumblestone, with a large horizontal axle connecting through a chink in the castle walls. The blades of the wheel were flat and gnarled, adding to a definite drag. What do you use it for? Jon asked, although Chet had already sussed the operation out from the castle servants. Steward Wayne walked them to a small hut abutting the building. There was another pit wheel, although smaller in size, connected to the axle. Other crude wheels were connected to it, finally leading to a smaller wheel known as a stone nut. There were two millstones, a stationary bedstone that acted as the base, and a slightly concave runner stone above that would grind the grain and push it to the edges of the wheel. It was a grist mill to process wheat, barley, and oats into flour. We use it to grind grain. Witherades said, But what else? In the last 3 days, we have not seen the mill put to use. Jon said, The mill is needed only during harvest. I suppose we could use it to crush grapes, but it would be hard to clean. What else could you use a watermill for? Ving said, So many things, Jon thought. Vaden might know how to assist Hoster Tully, but he had little knowledge of the power of machines. He inspected the cogs carefully, trying to see if there was any place to place additional levers and gears of his own. A mill can be used for many things. Seeds could be crushed to provide cooking oil. You can also make a sawmill where timber would be cut into lumber boards, or ore could be crushed. I think a mill could help in spinning yarn or carding wool, Jon said. Using water power to cut wood or spin yarn, that sounds impossible, just like dragons, the steward jested. Except dragons flew over the Riverlands 150 years ago, Jon thought. He stepped back from the wheels. The whole structure was crude. The Tullys used the entire power of the tumblestone to grind a bit of grain. The stream wheel submerged in a river was almost as bad as a horizontal wheel, and took a great deal of force to generate a bit of power. The cogs and gears on the other side were also poorly designed. "Do you have any more spare parts or spare wheels?" Jon asked. "We do have another wheel, but it is smaller and narrower. It would not be large enough to place in the tumblestone and do work," Vane said. Larger machines powered operations better than smaller ones, but only if they were well designed. The water wheel on the tumblestone was not. "How deep is the western moat that connects the tumblestone and the Red Fork?" Jon asked. "About 10 feet, and it slopes down. The tumblestone is deeper than the trident," Veman said. That was perfect. With a river like the White Knife, Jon would need to build a dam and a reservoir to channel the water to and from the wheel. But here, the water could just flow from the tumblestone to the Red Fork, along an already cut channel. All he needed now was a hole for the horizontal axle, and a world of opportunities opened up. "So many ways to prove the maesters wrong. You have been very helpful. Would it be possible for me to use the smaller wheel and any axles or gears lying around?" Jon asked. "Of course. Lord Hoster has asked that House Stark receive assistance in any way possible," Steward Wayne said in an unctuous tone. Jon looked at the powerful currents flowing on the north side. He suspected that before slavery, the ancient Valyrians were forced to harness water power to build towers and roads. After capturing hundreds of thousands of slaves from the Empire of Guess, science and discovery had stagnated and the use of machines declined. Valyria was greater when it was poor and smart, Jon thought. He would bring that back, one watermill at a time. "I don't see why you want my company so much, Snow," Jaime Lannister japed. "I am not sure how they behave at the Citadel, but the Kingsguard take no wives or husbands." "Well, since I don't have blonde hair, green eyes, or big tits, I am not your type, Sarah Jaime. I need something from you," Jon said. The Lion of Lannister walked with his hands and feet free, but he was watched by Eddard Stark and several Mormont guards. "And why would I help you? Why in the Seven Hells would I do anything that could benefit House Stark?" Jon walked out of the west gate, and the guards forced Jaime to follow. It was a strange castle that Axel Tully had constructed. Riverrun had 3 sides, but the north gate was only accessible by boat. When the Red Fork flooded, the drawbridge on the south gate would be lashed with waves. This far west, the trident meandered and ran slow, but Jon would not want to drive a wagon over the south bridge in a storm. Let alone send out an army to fight. Only the west gate could be used in all seasons. "I need you to convince a few prisoners to agree to their ransom. Their families have already offered an acceptable price," Jon said. Jaime Lannister's face twisted into a scowl. "That is a poor jest, Snow. I may have broken oaths, but I will not betray my house. My father will execute any ransomed prisoners. He will strip their lands and force their families into exile. If he doesn't hang them first." After the bridge, they turned right to where the tumblestone met the western sandstone walls. Lord Crakehall had made his feudal stand there with 1,500 soldiers. Stark guards hailed Jon as he passed into a small pavilion. Crude wooden poles formed a palisade, fencing in dozens of boys with the gold and brown hair of the Westerlands. They were not shackled, but heavy chains were tied to the fence posts, ready for use. Craneag, with short bows and spears, guarded the river to prevent any escape by swimming. Most boys slumped on the ground, but one lad with long golden curls stood proudly. "Uncle Jaime," the boy said, turning emerald green eyes to the Kingslayer. He was tall and lanky, but still a youth at 10 and 1. "Tybolt," Jaime said, smiling, "you are not hurt." "No, I jumped into the tumblestone after the siege tower came down. It killed a dozen knights standing next to me and burnt many horses to death," the boy said. "I take you know the lad, then," Jon said. "You already know who he is, Snow," Jaime said. "Tybolt Marbrand." eldest son of Laurent Marbrand and Gisela Lefford, a page for several years at Casterly Rock and squire at Crakehall, Jon said. They have shown me my mother's letter. She promises the Northmen a large ransom for my return, but I do not know if I can accept. Will I be seen as a weakling? Uncle Jaime, I do not want to bring shame to my father or grandfather. I would rather die at Riverrun than be branded a coward. But my mother begs for my safe return, Tybolt said. What acts of bravery do you intend to perform in the dungeon? Jon quipped. I think you should go home to Ashmerk. There is no shame in being captured or ransomed. Even Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight was held prisoner in Dorne, Jaime said. Lord Crakehall will not think so. He resisted even though we were outnumbered and surrounded. He wanted the Northmen to pay dearly for our lives, Tybolt said. The only thing the Northmen paid was the pitch needed to burn down the siege tower. The brindled boar may be fierce, but not very bright. There will be wars to come. You are not yet 12 years of age. You will have other chances to die. There is little honor in dying in a dungeon. Swear an oath not to fight against the Northmen, and you can go free, Jon said. The boy nodded reluctantly, and then hugged Suchukeme. A few servants from the castle entered with bread and cheese for the prisoners. The guards herded the boys into the corner where they were fed a scanty lunch and drank water from the river. Jon Snow walked back over the west gate, with Ser Jaime in tow. There was a crude workspace in the courtyard, where a wooden wheel stood in the middle of tools and nails. Several Wintertown boys were sanding down the planks of the wheel, while others crafted axles and gears. Satin was attaching a leather skin in between two giant paddles of wood connected with a hinge. The paddles were 3 feet long, an iron nozzle was at the head of the device. What in seven hells is that? Jaime asked. It is a bellow for a forge, Jon said, taking out a parchment and quill. Do you have giants? Even a huge man would be exhausted pumping those bellows after a few minutes, Jaime said. I will show you how it works when we finish. Here. Jon handed the paper to Jaime. Write a letter to the Golden Tooth. Ask them to send men to escort Tybolt and the others back to the Westerlands. I will write down their names and castles later. Yaxley clenched the quill angrily in his right hand. You are a bastard. You used me. You knew I would tell Tybolt to go home. Of course I did. Those squires are only 10 to 15 years old. Do you want them to die in a dungeon? Jon said. I was 15 when I fought my first battle, Jaime said. You were knighted for helping to defeat the Kingswood Brotherhood. Outlaws protected by the small folk, Jon said. They were vicious bandits. The Smiling Knight was the mountain of his time. He was just as cruel and a better sword, Jaime said. And now you fight on the same side as the mountain of this time. What does that make you, Sir Jaime? Jon said. The Lannister knight stayed silent, writing a letter to Lady Miranda Lefford. Do you know about why the Kingswood Brotherhood was founded? The usual tripe, to fight tyranny, to be a band of brothers, to protect the innocent. I am sure the Kingswood Brotherhood killed as many small folk as any other group of bandits, Jaime said. No doubt they did, but they were led by Simon Toyne, Jon said. I remember him. Brown hair, large droopy ears, he looked like a monkey. He was skilled with the sword, though. Sir Barristan killed him, Jaime said. House Toyne was from the Stormlands near Cape Wrath and Estermont. Sir Terence Toyne was a member of the Kingsguard, and Aegon the Unworthy found him in bed with his 20-year-old mistress, Bethany Bracken. Jon said, Wasn't there another Bracken? Jaime asked. Barbara Bracken. She was the 5th of Aegon's mistresses. Barbara groomed her younger sister to replace Melissa Blackwood. Within a year of becoming the mistress of a fat, foul-tempered king, Bethany was caught cheating. Sir Terence and Bethany declared they were in love. Aegon forced Bethany to watch while her lover was dismembered alive, piece by piece. They chopped off his cock, broke every bone in his hands and feet, and then got more creative. It took hours for Sir Terence to die. Then they killed Bethany and her father, Lord Bracken. Sir Terence's 2 brothers tried to avenge him by killing King Aegon, but Aemon the Dragon Knight died defending his brother. Aegon lasted another 6 miserable years on the Iron Throne, Jon said. And the point of your story? Jaime asked. You are proud of fighting against the Kingswood Brotherhood, and perhaps you should be. Despite the songs, they were robbers and thieves. But what about Aegon the Unworthy? He did more damage than all the bandits that ever lived. Had he died the Toynes, his brother and Queen Nerys, might have guided the next generation, Jon said. Axelon was king. An unworthy king, but his brother was sworn to serve him. Prince Axelin was a man of honor, Jaime said. Yes, and the Seven Kingdoms suffered for it. Had Aegon the Unworthy died at the swords of the Toyne brothers, he would have never legitimized his bastards. There would be no Blackfire rebellion, no succession issues. Prince Aemon and Queen Nerys might even have lived happily ever after, Jon said. You would let the rightful king to the Seven Kingdoms be killed. I thought the Starks were all about duty and honor. Ned Stark is famous for his virtue. He wears it like a suit, Jaime said. Family, duty, and honor are the words of House Tully. And I am a Snow, not a Stark. Bastards have no house words and don't have the luxury for honor. We only care about destroying our enemies, whoever they are, Jon said. Jon waited in the shadows until the ragged group of Riverlords left the solar. That night, Admiral Tully enjoyed a festive dinner in the Great Hall with boon companions. Mark Piper, Carol Vance, Patrick Mallister, Lemon Goodbrook, they drank summer wine and told stories about youthful adventures. The ones who sought to speak with Robb displayed no such cheer. They did not cringe, but they shuffled away wearily, as if the war in the Riverlands haunted their every step. They were the walking wounded, their soldiers decimated by the Lannister attacks, and their hollow faces were nothing like Aedmir's jaunty friends. The lords and ladies were a mixed bunch with a medley of different sigils. There was an old elegant woman, her face marred by grief, with 9 bats on a yellow field, Lady Shellowent. A somber boy with the weight of the world on his narrow shoulders and worried face wore a doublet with a black plowman on a brown field. Layman Derry. He was the last of a once great family, and he could not have been any older than Tybolt. There was a sad man with a black talon on a multicolored field. Lord Leicester might have been a brave knight once, but his 4 sons all died at Robert's Rebellion, 2 on each side. There were other sigils, a silver tree on a green field, a red salmon on white, 3 red ducks on a white stripe in a blue field, 3 white hedgehogs on yellow. They were living victims of the war, and if things did not change, would be dead soon, and they had come to Robb Stark, not Edmure Tully, to air their grievances. Come on, Shella, a graceful brunette in a black and white said, offering her elbow to Lady Wend. The woman was slightly younger than Lady Stark, and wore swans and acorns on her dress. Jon wondered if his long-lost mother looked like this. Calm, beautiful, and caring. Then he shook off thoughts of the past and went in to see his brother. Robb sat at the desk, staring at a cup of ale. He nodded to his brother, and then put aside the cup in favor for a pitcher of cold river water. How bad is it? Jon said as he took a seat and held up a goblet for water. Tywin Lannister set the Riverlands on fire. From the God's Eye to the Red Fork, he left a trail of destruction and misery everywhere, sacking castles and destroying whole villages. They even tore down a church, looted the treasures, and raped the septas, Robb said. These are sad things, Robb, but you knew this already. The fact that they told you does not change what happened, Jon said. The Rivermen want to free their castles from Lannister control. They will stay for the tourney, but many wish to leave after. They are not pleased with the Tullys, Robb said. That wasn't great news. Spreading out their forces would play into Tywin Lannister's hands, and Gregor Clegane and the mercenaries had used their mobility to pick off the fractious Riverlords one by one. Do they have enough men to retake those territories? Jon asked. The Riverlords argue, but they also intermarry each other a great deal. Well, not House Mouden and House Derry. Those two have always aspired to greater things and married more with the Reach and the Stormlands. There are many ties for the Wents, the Leicesters, and the Grells. Other Rivermen will want to help and defend their own land. The Pipers and the Vances will want to return to their land and clear them of invaders, Robb said. So, you won't gain troops. You will actually lose them, Jon said. Edmure Tully cannot stop his bannermen from defending their land, and he does not have the forces to protect them. Several houses have more troops than House Tully, Robb said. Is there any way to keep the men here? Jon asked. Hold more tournaments? Give out prizes? We need to have a strategy rather than waiting for Tywin's letter. Robb noticed the gleam in his brother's eyes. What is it? Do you have something that will inspire them? I might, but I need time to make sure this works. We have finished the letters for releasing the squires. We have received 5,000 gold dragons for 70 squires, Jon said. And how much of that is actual coin and not promises? Robb asked. Quite a bit. 4 of the 5. The families are eager to have them returned. As for the other men, 250 have agreed to ransoms totaling 20,000 dragons, but much of that is promises. Many are waiting to see if we exchange Sir Jaime Lannister. They expect the price of a ransom to drop if Lord Stark and our sisters are returned, Jon said. And will it? Robb said. Jon shrugged. It depends on how the Lannisters behave. If they leave the Riverlands to deal with Stannis or Renly Baratheon, then yes. If they continue to pillage and loot, then they will remain prisoners. More importantly, they have begun to talk, even the men who are not negotiating ransoms. They have told me tales about the Lannisters. Anything interesting? Robb asked. Tybolt Lannister has been planning for war for a long time. In the last few years, he has increased the forces, improved their armor, and built siege weapons. He gave more men to Clegane and made contact with sellswords. He has been expecting a fight for the throne. Interesting, but why? His grandchildren are already seated on that ugly thing, Rode said. There are rumors of the Targaryens returning. There is also talk that Joffrey is reckless and cruel. Perhaps Tywin thought that Robert Baratheon might put the crown prince aside, or that Joffrey would spark a civil war, Jon said. Even if Joffrey was disinherited, Tommen would be king, and he is also Tywin's grandson. Robb pointed out, but if succession became an issue, you would want the largest army possible, Jon said, and Tywin is still hiring mercenaries. A Brax knight says that his cousin traveled from Maidenpool to the disputed lands to hire a company of Marish crossbowmen, Jon said. More sellswords, Robb said with disgust. Yes, but dangerous ones. Monsieur is known for crossbows. They have ones that can shoot multiple bolts. More to the point, you need plate to protect against a crossbow. The bolts can pierce leather and chain easily, Jon said. So you think these sellswords are to target us, because northern fighters are less well-armored than southern knights? Robb said. Jon nodded his head. Tywin is strengthening his army while we sit around wondering what games to play in the tourney. Edmure Tully is asking for a grand melee. I am worried my best fighters will kill each other, and not Lannisters. I can strengthen our army, but I need to know if I build something at Riverrun. Will the Tullys claim it? Will Edmure behave like the Freys with the bridge? Jon asked. Edmure Tully may not be the best at protecting his bannermen, but he is no secretary. I will explain to Edmure that whatever you construct belongs to the north. My uncle is a reasonable man, and the Blackfish will also make him see sense. You have built many things so far, and all of them have helped House Stark, Robb said. And I have not even began to use the trebuchets and catapults. I will need to spend gold on iron ore, and require a fair amount of space near the west wall, Jon said. Inside or outside the castle? Robb asked. Inside, in the courtyards. I would like to keep my building secret until it is finished, Jon said. Done. Any men or gold you need will be fine. I will deal with the Tullys, Robb said. The two brothers toasted with cups of water. To the north. Jon woke up early the next morning and scarfed a quick breakfast of fresh-baked bread and butter. He felt a tremor of excitement as he contemplated the new project, a rush from doing something original and different. He had gotten addicted to this feeling, to be on the precipice of a new discovery, ready to explore uncovered ground. If only the Citadel was like this always, building upon the findings of the past to look further and deeper. Instead, many maesters busied themselves in politics or strutting about like a Tyrell peacock. One day, Jon would find a place where men could learn, experiment, and study to expand the limits of human knowledge. Jon waited until the honor guard entered the Great Hall. Robb inspired loyalty from the rivermen and northerners alike, and many lords and knights ate meals with the heir of Winterfell. Jon did not enjoy drawing attention, but the bridge had been an effort of the entire army, and it would be niggardly to not allow those with interest to help. Robb finished a thick slice of bacon, wiped his mouth, and then raised his voice. My lords, my brother Jon has something to say. I have something that I wish to build, and I require help. It is a large task, and my crew will not be able to handle the entire effort. I will need strong men and women for several days, Jon said. Master Snow, are we building a new bridge? Wylus Manderly asked. Perhaps more mighty weapons of death. After all, my name is Catapult Umber for a very good reason, boasted the small Jon to the rolled eyes of many other Northmen. Master Snow, my brothers are not here, but Karstark soldiers would be happy to help, Eddard Karstark said. It is not a single thing, but rather a group of machines working together. It should take 4 or 5 days. I will explain then. Jon said. Snow House Mormon pledges our full support, Maggie said. Jon, House Stark is behind you. I eagerly await seeing what you build, Robb said, speaking for the Northerners. The Rivermen were a bit more reticent and the Freys muttered angrily while Chet and the Wintertown boys beamed. Jon's first act was to shut off the sluice gate. Over the next 20 minutes, the water drained from the west side of Riverrun into the Trident, leaving a wet but empty moat. The western side would be flooded in any siege, but with Ser Jaime in their hands, and Kevan Lannister soon to be delivered into the keep, the sluice gate could be shut. Jon climbed down on a rope and began to measure dimensions. He already had drawn this morning what he intended, the gate to be sealed so that water from Tumblestone flowed only at the top of the channel until it fell on the water wheel from the top. He had found a gap in the castle walls large enough to put a horizontal axle through. The angle of the drop and the small size of the wheel meant the axle would come through only a half-foot above the ground. Jon directed the Mormon and Karstark soldiers to take wood cut by Hornwood and Forester men to close off the bottom of the sluice. With a few wooden posts they could build a higher riverbed for the Tumblestone to travel when the gate was reopened. That would be one part of the operation. The second part would be building the forge. For that, Jon would use the Wintertown crew. He gathered them together to show him how to make fire bricks. They could use clay mixed with sandstone, but the brick needed to be fired in a kiln until it was vitrified, hardened into a glass-like substance. They would need an immense amount of bricks, so Jon dispatched them immediately to gather or purchase the red clay needed. With the help of the small Jon, Chet and Clytus dragged back the 2 remaining siege towers from the field. One frame could be used to construct a ramp for materials, and Jon sketched out a pulley system that could drop those materials into a top hole in the furnace. The second would be a simple scaffold so men could pile the bricks higher. He did not need all 30 feet of the tower, but greater height was better than less. The last part of the project was constructing the tools. Satin and the girls already started making the first of several double-chambered bellows. A few tools could be rough. The large trip hammers that would pound down, but the cams and cranks to convert the spinning motion of the axle into vertical movement would require precision. Jon also built facilities to quench the hot metal, but not in water, but rather cooking oil. He knew that cooling down metal too quickly did nothing but quenching in oil, and tempering could make the metal hard, sharp, and malleable. Making proper steel required balance. If it is too hard, it would not be malleable. Armor would be tougher with less hardness because the metal would not be brittle. Finally, he would need polishing stones attached to a mill to prevent rust. Maester Snow, what can I help with? Jerry asked. Actually, I have an important task for you. You know the local merchants? Jon said. Of course, many buy herbs from my mother, Jerry said. I need to buy as much iron ore and limestone as possible. Charcoal as well, plus coke. There is a special type of stone that burns particularly well found in mountainous fields, Jon said. Perhaps I can be of assistance. A tall, grizzled, gray-haired man said. Sir Brynden, Jon said with surprise. What are you doing here? The Blackfish snorted. It is obvious to a blind man you are building something related to weapons. You want iron ore and you are firing bricks to make a furnace. This is clearly as important as any scouting mission. I could help you. Jon turned to a wide-eyed Jerry. Sir Brynden is well respected around the Riverlands. If he asks, the merchants will be sure to try their best. Why don't the two of you go together? Remember all the iron ore, limestone, coke you can buy, and tell them that if they can get some more from the north, south, or west, we would buy more. Oh, and vegetable oil, Jon said. Come on, lad, we have our mission, the Blackfish said. Jon could hear their voices still as they walked away. Do you have any idea what he is building? Jerry said. No clue, but anything that can help kill Lannisters is worth building, the Blackfish replied. 2 days later, the watermill was ready. A large horizontal axle connected the outside wheel to a smaller gear inside the castle walls. The channel had been constructed, and the wheel had multiple buckets to catch and drop the water to flow into the Red Fork. A small crowd had gathered that morning to see the new water wheel. Jon directed the sluice gates to be open. Blue-white water rushed down the elevated bed and flowed onto the wheel. The wheel spun backwards, and the water dripped to the bottom of the moat. The water wheel spun quickly and smoothly. Jon noted the speed of the inner wheel. It was far faster than the giant wheel on the tumblestone. "All right, shut down the sluice gates for now. We will open them when we are ready," Jon said. "Master, why does the wheel move so much more quickly than the grist mill?" Chet asked. "Why do you think?" Jon replied to his Watertown boys. "Because a lot of the energy is wasted on the big wheel because the bottom is being dragged through the river," Jerry said, a bit too smugly. "That is the major reason. It also helps we use buckets that hold and release water more quickly. Boys, this is a pitchback wheel. Even with less water, it is more efficient. It is smaller than the wheel on the tumblestone, but yields 2 to 3 times more power. We can convert this power to perform a lot of tasks," Jon said. "Like blowing the bellows?" Satin asked. "Exactly. There are many things that water can do. Much more than just grinding flour," Jon said. The structure towered over him, but the ramp was even higher. 10 feet of the furnace had been built in the last 2 days, but the ramp and pulley reached over 20 feet high. The building looked like the bottom of a giant red brick egg, and in the corner, many wagon loads of iron ore, limestone, and charcoal, and oil. "That looks quite odd, brother," Robb said as he took in the weird brick building. "It is only half done. When it is finished, you will see the true purpose," Jon said. "I've heard wild rumors. The Septa claims it is some deviltry from the Citadel, and there are whispers that you intend to burn prisoners alive in some sorcerous ritual." Robb Yerjet, "Let them say that. Perhaps it will raise the ransoms people will pay," Jon said as the brothers laughed. In 3 more days, the furnace was finished. Even as the northern infantry finally came into sight, dozens of banners could be seen. The Flayed Man and the Mermaid, the Karstark son, and many different mountain clans. Harrion and Torrin, Karstark, rode at the front with 5 prisoners. Several, wearing Lannister colors, roped together in a cart. That morning, lords and knights, rivermen and northerners, gathered as Jon revealed his creation. A large crowd had formed at the castle, and servants and ladies stole glances at the enormous 20-foot-high brick egg jutting at the sky. Steward Vane opened the sluice gates. The water rushed forward and the wheel began to spin. The motion of the wheel was connected to 2 large bellows that steadily pumped hot, heated air into the bottom of the building. Jon had already stuffed burning coals and charcoals into the furnace. The bricks radiated heat, and a hot red flames could be seen on top. He had carefully measured the exact proportions last night for the first run. The Small Jon and the Great Jon emptied sacks of iron ore, limestone, and coke into the ramp, dropping hundreds of pounds of metal and rocks through a hole in the top. The umbers dripped sweat as load after load were hauled up with a hook and pulley to be released. The furnace blazed with heat, and the central bricks that bulged in the middle glowed white-hot like a scene from the 7 Hells. Jon signaled with his right hand that the loading was finished, and the umbers scurried away. "It is finished," Jon said proudly, to the gasps of the crowd. They waited and waited and waited for minutes, but nothing happened. What is supposed to happen?" Robb asked. "It needs time to work. This is the first run, so perhaps 6 hours," Jon said. "Will it explode and shoot giant flames at our enemies?" the Small Jon asked. "No, it simply burns the ore," Jon started to explain. "A fire? You brought us all the way here to watch a few rocks burn. I thought with all the excitement you were about to birth a dragon." Theon Greyjoy snarked as many of the lords grumbled their disappointment. "This is an improved smelting process. The temperature and energy utilization are quite different from current forges. The limestone binds the impurities from the iron," Jon said. Jon, perhaps the lords should return in..." "How long?" Robb said. 6 hours, Lord Stark." That morning and afternoon, Jon went about his daily routine, ensuring the security of the thousands of prisoners. There were 5 knights to be placed in the Maiden Vault and 200 more in the miserable Riverrun dungeons. He finished negotiations on 30 more ransoms and interrogated dozens of prisoners, all eager to trade information for their lives. Jon considered searching for Asha. The healer continued to deliver a steady supply of herbs and medicine, but was nowhere to be found near the castle. According to the lineage and histories of the great houses of the 7 kingdoms, Jurian Lannister was Jaime's uncle and Tywin's youngest brother. He would be 30 years of age when Juri was born, but Jurian had disappeared 3 years later in a quest. Lions had not taken him away, and Jon doubted any Lannister would let the mother of their child run away to the Riverlands. Jon ate a hollow heel of bread stuffed with chunks of salt fish fried in bacon grease. The Tullys had prepared tastier dishes, but he had no time for a leisurely meal. Robb was obligated to laugh and smile over lunch with the Northern Lords. Jon preferred to check on the water wheel and measure out limestone. He forced himself not to visit his new creation too often. The furnace would not work faster if he was watching. Plus, it was bloody hot. The heat was so great that the air shimmered in the courtyard. It did not bother him much, but Ghost was discomforted. And to think I was enjoying my uncle's war stories when you pulled me away. Jaime Lannister grumbled as they left the tower. War stories how he was tricked by 2 green Karstark boys and captured. You wanted to see what I built, so I am bringing you there. Jon said, yes, even in the Maiden Vault we have heard of the great show in the morning. Snow's folly. The bastard's blunder, Jaime said. Spare me your japes, Sir Jaime. You should be more clever than a Greyjoy. Now come. The crowd was even larger than the morning. The Mormont girls had showed up as well as all the Tollys. An impassive Rose Bolton stood next to a sneering Rickard Karstark. The Rivermen had shown up, from young Lyman Derry to a sour-faced William Mooton. Robb strode forward, trailed by Perwyn Frey and Greatjon Umber. Robb gave the Kingslayer a funny look before turning to his brother. Jon, we are all here now. Yes, Snow, let's see some more rocks, Diane hooted. Jon grabbed heavy iron tongs while the Wintertown boys laid down several large stone molds, a block the size of a man's legs, on layers of brick next to the furnace. Wood wheels were attached to a board of hardened clay to move the molds quickly. Very carefully, Jon grabbed a hook on the furnace and slid open a panel, making a small opening. Hot air gushed out, and the crowd backed away in fear, and then they saw it. A stream of molten steel, white-hot like the noon sun, poured down into the mold. After a few minutes, the boys shuttled the brick layer of brick with the precious steel ingot away to a pool. They gently lowered the ingot into a hot oil bath and brought the stone mold back to Jon. As the crowd stayed silent, Jon oversaw 2 more ingots with the same process. Pour, quench, and then temper in a kiln. Jon, how much can that make? Robb said in wonder at the endless stream of molten metal. Jon turned to face the crowd as Chet, Clytus, and the others continued their labors. This is a blast furnace. It uses iron ore, limestone, and coke to produce steel. Smiths make iron in bloomeries, pits a few feet high, because they can't blow enough air by hand. This solves that problem. Jon pointed to the 3 massive bellows, pumping steadily up and down from wooden hammers attached to cams on the spinning wheel. The water wheel generates energy to power these bellows. They blow hot air from the kiln into the furnace and raise the temperature for the 6 hours needed to smelt the iron ore. But how much steel can it make? Robb asked again, as molten steel continued to fill molds. 600 pounds, Jon said. The crowd burst into excited chatter. You can make 600 pounds of steel a day? The Blackfish asked. No, I can make 1,800 pounds. I can run 3 batches a day. I would prefer only 2, Jon said. But even with the steel, you need men to pound it into plates, and then to fit and polish the armor, Rose Bolton whispered. And this is why I will only do 2 batches a day. 8 ingots had already been poured out. Jon called out to Chet, and they slid over a large hammer, far too large for a man. Jon connected it with a cam to the wheel, and then grabbed an ingot and placed it on an anvil. The hammer was lifted up by the cam, and then crashed down. Jon maneuvered the ingot with tongs as the hammer bashed the ingot into a flat plate. This tree hammer is also powered by the water wheel. It can easily flatten the ingot. The plate does need to be fitted, and then buckles have to be made, but it can also be polished with this machine. Water power can smelt the iron ore, flatten the plates, and polish the armor. Only a few functions need a human hand. How much armor do you think you can make? Robb asked. With enough helpers, over 40 steel breastplates a day, and I can use the rest of the steel for other pieces. Shields, helmets, pauldrons, vambresses, and gauntlets, Jon replied. 40 a day. Jon, in a moon's time, you could equip 1,000 men, Robb said. Bah, how do we know this iron is strong? It might be brittle and weak, Theon said. This isn't iron, this is steel. Jon hung the flattened plate onto the pulley of the ramp next to the forge. The Wintertown crew had brought the last ingot away to be quenched in a pool of hot oil. Jon closed the blast furnace, sliding the brick panel shut with tongs. Eddard Karstark, would you do the honors? The youngest Karstark stepped up, and with a loud cry, slammed the battle axe with both arms into the steel. He struck several times before backing away. The astonished bystanders could see no change in the metal plate. Robb inspected the steel with care. There is not even a dent. This plate can take a sword blow without a mark.
Or a crossbow bolt.
Improved armor may save the lives of those eager to rush into battle. We are not done yet. Molds for helmets, shields, and greaves need to be made. I have to learn how to make swords, arrowheads, and spears from the ingot, and I will need more workers to help produce weapons and fit armor. Jon said, "You will have everything you need," Robb said, staring with open admiration at the enormous brick monstrosity that had smelted vast quantities of iron. Jon chuckled. "It is not the furnace you should admire. It is the water wheel. The wheel can do so many things. If I had the time, water power would change the Seven Kingdoms, from the north all the way to Dorne.